Okay, Saif, thanks for that. That was a nice sort of a state of the times. We just starting from your own journey, Saif. There's something that your mother, Sharmila Tagore, said in an interview which was very striking, and she said that like all non-conformist parents who want their children to immediately conform, she wanted Saif and her other children to settle down in school. But she says that he always preferred the seas to the comfort of the harbour, and you had this education abroad and all that, and you decided to be an actor. So take us through that, when you decided to kind of maybe not pursue something more conventional and wanted to become an actor. Any memories, any things?
Well, I mean, I was very lucky. My father told me when I was very young, he said I could forget about any kind of inheritance from him, and that he doesn't have the kind of money that I'm imagining. And growing up in Delhi, where there were a lot of wealthy people, he said, you're not like that. He said, what I will do is send you to a good school and hopefully to a good university. And I think that's the greatest gift I can give you. And the rest is up to you. So I managed to get into Winchester College. It's a very academic institution. And sadly, after a while, I kind of lost complete interest in academics and pursuing anything that would lead to some kind of 9-to-5 job. I found that frightening, and I knew at a very young age that that's not what I wanted. And it was a great cause of worry to my parents because, my father, having been to Winchester and Oxford and had a very analytical kind of mind, used to say, sit down with a piece of paper and say what you can do, what you can't do, what you like doing, and used to make these lists. And anyway, to cut a long story short, everyone was worried that what will this guy do? And somebody came to Bombay, B.R. Chopra, the late Ravi Chopra, came to Delhi to meet my parents and offered an ad to me and something to do with movies. And for the first time I felt a sense of purpose, a sense of direction. I thought moving to Bombay, renting my own little flat and working on a creative enterprise like a film would be just the most exciting thing I could think of for everything that came with it. The different hours, the creativity, the new people. And I just remember that. And I was very, very fortunate to, I think, probably come into films at a time where the audiences were also quite forgiving. I was straight out of England. I used to speak Hindi with a bit of an accent. But people were kind, the press were kind, and I think I got better. And have been in love with that profession ever since. So I think a lot of actors have started like that, at least in this city. Not the most brilliant academic record. Some have.
Saif, what you did, I think, starting with Dil Chahta Hai and all, took your work to a completely different level. But in the 90s, the kind of films you did, and they did not do very well either at that time. Did you ever feel that you may want to give this up? Or were you confident that you can play a part that you
I think I had, burnt my bridges, and I think that was a good thing to do. I mean, there was just no other option except eventually succeeding. And it was very frightening because at various times there seemed to be nothing working, and it was quite disheartening. Also, the 90s, I think, was a terrible time generally for movies. There were a lot of people making movies who probably shouldn't have been making movies, and a lot of people acting in movies that also had no business being there. It wasn't a creative time. It seemed, everything from the underworld to, just not a very appealing kind of intellectual person was making films. And I think somewhere the name of the game became trying to get as many people as possible into the theater and to constantly dumb things down, So there was no connect, really, between me and what I was doing. And as you say, that changed when Farhan Akhtar offered me Dil Chahta Hai. For the first time, you weren't playing another version of Mr. Bachchan or, Shashi Kapoor. You were playing a guy in a T-shirt and shorts. And there was it was uncharted territory really for all of us because the seniors looked down and said, this is never going to work. And, you know, you're doing live sound and trying to be all organized and trying to make India like Hollywood. There was a lot of resistance to that kind of progress. But Farhan was pretty clear what he wanted. And it was so liberating being part of something like that.
But what happened, you think, in the new millennium? I mean, this is 2001 and films changed. And you did an incredible number of and kinds of characters. And at a time, and I'm sure you've answered this ad nauseum, but take us through that, you know, you can't afford to do too much acting if you're a star. So, you know, the actor thing. But you kind of defied that and you did these flawed characters.
I guess it depends what your mental image is or what your ideal was. And at that point, I really looked up to... you know, American actors like Johnny Depp, who consequently have become superstars, but at that time were people who made really interesting choices, you know. And despite being box office, you know, friendly and saleable, they constantly did stuff that was a little edgier and I thought cooler. And I always wanted to think of myself like that the dream for me would be to be saleable at the box office, but at the same time to promote something a little more edgy. And maybe I shouldn't go so far abroad as to look at Johnny Depp, maybe even looking at my mother's career. Someone who was always a mainstream star and saleable, but would also promote, whether it's Bengali cinema or something a little more artistic, is what I think gives longevity and an interesting angle to an actor, and something I think we need to do.
Saif, I mean, there's lots said about your aesthetic sense and, you know, and your creative pursuits as you know, as opposed to just kind of maybe running around trees. I mean, that's a very good thing to do, but perhaps not always. So how did you kind of, the kind of person you are, you read a lot and, you know, you probably have thoughts which don't always kind of, you know, find an immediate fit with a lot of scripts and all. So was Bombay different or difficult for somebody like you?
You know, initially, like I say, in the 90s it was a different time, but after Dil Chahta Hai, there's been lots of things in common
Why
with
did
so
that
many.
change, you think?
You know, I think films is just a reflection of what the country is going through.
Is it the multiplex?
You know, the multiplex is another conversation. I mean, the kind of films, I remember Aditya Chopra telling me that this is the market we've got to hit. So when he started with Hum Tum and films like that, and Ek Hasina Thi, he said, this is the market that we've got to look at. So, I mean, that's an entire different conversation. I mean, you mentioned the National Award for Hum Tum. A lot of people think I got it for Omkara, but it was for Hum Tum. And recently there was some uproar with people, you know, objecting to old Akshay getting it for Rustam. And then somebody wrote, well, I mean, if they've given it to Saif for Hum Tum, of course they can give it to him because it doesn't mean, it was quite offensive, I thought. And I want to defend that, you know,
Please
because
do, yeah.
It was such an easy movie, but I remember Aditya Chopra telling me this film goes against all the normal films we've ever made here, you know. The heroine's going to get married to somebody else, then she's, you know, her husband's going to die, and then you're going to sleep with her, and then she's going to, and I actually want you to kiss her, that also hasn't happened before. And then she's going to turn around and say, don't feel sorry for me, you can't just, you know, marry me or go out with me because you slept with me. So all this was really progressive. And there was no mother and father, the only issue is your own mind. And the whole film was a series of conversations, and I thought, I can't imagine how this will run. And the idea was to be as charming as possible and to make those scenes, which are just conversations, hold. And there were some 3-4 minute conversations without a cut. And when we pulled that off and it looked easy and effortless, you know, I take a little bit of offense when people say, oh, it's so easy, it's, you know, nothing. I think it changed cinema in a way. And is the kind of precursor to all the kind of modern love stories we're seeing today. And all credit to Aditya Chopra for doing that. And I think, you know, we were successful in making it look so easy that people don't take it seriously.
Talking of Omkara, that's one of your more favorite roles, right? When you play Iago, you play Langra Tyagi. So there is something about Shakespeare and you as well, right? I mean, you seem to be reciting a lot of Shakespeare on television and scared a lot of us when we saw reruns of that on YouTube. That was frightening. You shouldn't do these things.
That was a mistake. My host was...
Why did you do that?
I don't know why she brought up Shakespeare. Who was it? Anisha Baig on Night Out. She's very sweet.
Yes.
But I think the average age of that audience was about
19.
16 or something. They wanted to talk about Go Goa Gone, and they weren't very interested. And if you did want to talk about Shakespeare, we could have pitched it at them in a slightly more interesting way. Anyway, I think Shakespeare's the greatest. Not that I'm an expert, but I studied English literature. He's the greatest dramatist, greatest writer ever, who's understood possibly all the complicated human relationships and emotions. And any actor really should read his Shakespeare, because
I mean, in India, Shakespeare now seems to have become a Romeo. Do you think Shakespeare would approve with these anti-Romeo teams or squads that are now setting out to try and decide, which couples should be?
Well, I mean, even I think even in Romeo and Juliet, they were trying to decide very much which couples should be and shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem. I think he would have objected, of course, because he would have understood that human nature is to try and control that. I mean, we live in times where I read the Express, I read the newspaper, and you have these articles about these things, but I just keep wondering who's reading them, because you don't need to tell me, how to behave and how to govern my thoughts, because generally speaking, I think I'm all right. But the people perpetrating these things, I don't think read the paper. So I keep wondering whether the message is really going out there, or whether us discussing it even beyond a point will have any effect.
But the India of today, 2017, what kind of stories do you think should now, is there a particular story in your head?
Who's, again, without sounding too pseudo, John Ruskin, I think, said that if you want to look at the progress of a country, you look at three books: the book of its words, deeds, and the book of its art. I mean, one without the other is unreliable, but the one that will tell you the most about what's happening in a country is the art. So if you look at Hindi films and how they progress, or just even pick up a part of it, like the villain in the Hindi movie, you get a really good idea of what's been going on. I mean, there was a time when it was the Thakur and, the kind of, when it was feudal, sort of rich people, there was feudal, then it was money, then it was your parents, and then it's yourself. And now, I mean, if you look at Dangal, I think rightly so, we've identified as the villain mediocrity and backwardness is the fear and what we're worried about. And there seem to be two Indias in a kind of a schizophrenic growth, where you have fitness and energy and intelligence and a lot of positive things. And then you have the same old villains kind of weighing us down. And that seems to be the struggle.
Yeah. I mean, from the time we speak of Dil Chahta Hai as a point, 2001 is when India's changing, and cinema also reflects that and also perhaps influences that change a bit. From then on to now, in what way has India kind of, walked? What distance has it walked?
Okay, listen, I'm just saying, like, I am 46. I've grown up in Bhopal and Pataudi. I've grown up in, it was Bombay then. And there's been massive changes. I mean, there's so much more happening in this city now, in this country now, than there was. I mean, I had absolutely nothing to do in Bhopal, for many years. I used to play cricket or run around with the Jamadar's children were my best friends. This sounds really politically incorrect. And one day, I said, oh, I have shoes just like that. And then I have a belt just like that. And he was pinching my clothes. And I realized, I said, there's so much disparity between us. The only people around are the people that work for us. And I think that is something also that has gotten worse in today's country. The people working for us, the people that help us at home, that kind of disparity is something I think all of us with some money or with some privilege need to be really conscious and support and look after them like we do. We treat them like families now. We adopt their children, we send them to school, we kind of make sure that hopefully they feel it a little less. I mean, it's just crazy to be sitting and having lunch and having dinners and having these people serve you and have nothing themselves. Yeah. So in that sense, the problem is still there. But in many ways, I mean, this country has opened up so much and there's so many more opportunities than even I have seen. you know.
Yes. Saif, I mean, Hindi cinema and all kinds of Indian cinema is like this real poster case, if you like, for inclusion. I mean, you just watch the credit roll. It's kind of got all kinds of names, identities, and people sort of come together in this amazing kind of thing. Yeah. So how do you feel about that? I mean, how do you feel about being part of an industry like that?
But that's the greatest thing about this industry, that it's so democratic. I mean, first of all, you can't control it. The only thing that works is things that people like, you know. And that's that, and it's not actually nepotism or anything like that. I can't control it, because you could be anybody's son or whatever. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can just walk in off the street. A spot boy can become a king in this profession, in this town, and that's the most beautiful thing about it, is that it can't actually be controlled beyond a point. And it's an umbrella that brings everybody together internationally. You got people. From all different religions, they just love cinema. And I think that's the best thing about it.
Yeah. Right? Do you think sort of religion is now sort of again becoming...
Well, also, I just wanted to also say, like when we travel the country and we live, we see things in other cities, this is probably, the city I enjoy living in the most. That's no comment. I mean, it is a comment on other cities. I think it's the same as the West, where the kind of glamorous talent, or I wouldn't say intellectual, as a creative talent, sort of gravitates to one city, and they seem to want to come here. It's not okay to live in another city or a smaller town. You want to come here. So we should be aware of that, I think, We should be aware that this is it. We've all come here for a reason, which is to try and express something, to try and do something, and to change something, and not get too complacent about that, because in this country, we're the best there is. And we should be aware of that, I feel.
Yeah. No, I was just coming to, identities seem to be becoming an issue sometimes more than perhaps what they should be now. Do you sometimes feel boxed in for reasons of your name, or your wife's name, or your parents' name, or the fact that you're the product of an interfaith marriage? Does that it should be a huge reservoir of kind of identities that you carry?
I don't know. I think things are changing, Things are changing. Everything is becoming a little more right-wing, perhaps rightly so. I mean, it's not just India. I mean, I was having a drink in the Palace Hotel in Gstaad. There's an Italian filmmaker who said, "Oh, very smart jacket, nice guys." I said, hello, yeah, nice to meet you. We started chatting for a minute, and he said, "Oh, you're Muslim?" So I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, don't tell anyone."
Did you tell anybody else, just as an act of defiance?
I kind of smiled, but I thought, this is he lives in Paris. They've had some trouble there. So this is a kind of prevalent attitude now. I feel it less in my own country than in some places abroad. So I don't feel boxed in by it. But I don't know. We're going to talk about religion.
No, not religion, but I'm just wondering, is there something that art kind of should be doing more of because of this thing that we see happening in the world and here? I mean, in the way that Hollywood is, it's kind of, evolved into more of a civil society than perhaps the Bombay film industry has. So maybe, maybe because of, the McCarthy era, etc., they were pulled up, Charlie Chaplin sent back. So all of that is happening and Hollywood reacts to that. I don't know, what is your sense?
They can say whatever they like about their
president. They do,
well.
and several things, and even after they've been sworn in. So do you kind of long for that freedom? Do we see a day when that may happen here as well?
I honestly don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I think we would like to be as honest as we can, and we strive towards that. But time and again, we've proven that. And maybe it's because we're still developing. Maybe it's because we're still finding our identity. I mean, it's all about timing. The world can't be judged by the same standards at the same time, because some things we have modernized because of television and fashion and certain things, but maybe a lot of our thinking, when I say I mean India in general, is still, a few years behind the West. And they've also had their time of insane nationalism where, I can think of the French Revolution, or think of all kinds of eras, or as you said, the McCarthy era, where, the wrong comment or the wrong kind of thing would get you into a lot of trouble. And they've come out of that and perhaps seem seem more sorted today. So maybe we need to go through it, you know. We have to stir it up. People have to say things, express themselves, get into trouble for saying it, and then, you know, everyone's got to eventually find a level. And I think we are doing that.
Yeah. Saif, what about, I mean, a lot has been said about your comic timing with good reason, and some of your peers have something very nice to say about Saif, that on stage he really, worries and bothers to make the other guy look good. So there's something he does which kind of, brings life to the set. But, talking about comedy in India, I mean, we see a lot of humor, some of it completely irreverential, but there's more of that happening online than it does in cinema. There's a lot more censorship, and we managed to even censor an Iranian film, The Salesman, after crossing the Iranian censors, still was censored by the Indian Censor Board. So, I mean, what's the future of comedy in India? I mean, you're doing a dark comedy next, aren't you? I mean,
I don't know what the future of comedy is. I mean, please help me focus this. But censorship, like my mother was a censor board chief, and I think she was really liberal. And I remember having conversations with her, and they were brilliant. They were open-minded. They were, responsible. And I was really proud. And obviously we're against censorship, and I find it ridiculous, some of the things that are happening today. Even though I remember they'd slashed a scene from a James Bond movie, and people were upset saying, oh, we can't see Monica Bellucci kissing this guy, so we don't want to watch English films in the theaters. And Akshay Kumar said, this is great.
So it's
this is
nice
brilliant.
marketing
Yes,
ploy.
yes. But ultimately, it's not great.
No.
Yeah.
But do you watch some of the comedy online? Sorry, please go ahead with your
please,
coffee.
what?
No, just do you watch some of the comedy online, which is quite, you have, I mean, we don't exactly
Not
have...
uncensored.
Yeah, uncensored stuff. I
No,
mean,
I actually
is that
haven't.
more fun? More satirical, more kind of edgy?
I don't know. I mean, it's. I realize people have to be careful, but I remember watching Scarface when I was a kid on cable TV, and it's got a lot of bad language in it, the original, And Al Pacino himself had dubbed, fool instead of the other F word,
Yes.
and it was working fine. It was working fine because, there was so many other powerful things at play. So, I'm generally against censorship, but I'm not the censor board chief. I don't understand some of these things. I think you should have a certificate, and you should just, if you get an A certificate, then that should mean that, you can do certain things. But here, we get an A certificate, and we cut, and we mutilate the movie. So, and you never know what you're going to have to do until you've already finished making the film. The guidelines don't make sense beyond a point. So, it's a nightmare because you've spent money and then you're at someone else's mercy. And you hope maybe something like Netflix and, Amazon and these guys will change that. So if you want to make something without censorship, you probably will start going there.
I mean, they say that Europe or America is sort of going through this golden age of television serials, and they do some of the most incredible themes and seasons which people are binge watching and all of that. So do you see the sort of big screen surviving this phase when, you and I can watch a whole film on a little mobile phone? I mean, is there still something to be said about big screen
Of course
magic?
there is. Then there always will be, but it takes people to understand the medium. It's a different medium. And that 70mm screen, there's something magical about that. And if you shoot according to that visual experience is something else, not even IMAX. I mean, so everything has has a medium that suits it. There's something great about television. It's so amazing what Netflix and these guys are doing, not just for English actor careers, who are really doing incredibly now. The budgets that they have, the honesty with which they make. I mean, if you take a show like The Crown, the budget for one season of The Crown was 10 times all 10 seasons of the English Foyle's War, for example.
GDP
a regular
of a quarter
show.
of a small country.
100 million, but also intellectually, the show was offered to the BBC, and they turned it down because they said, we can't have the King of England coughing up blood in the bathroom in the first scene. So this is it. There's an honesty to it as well, which is why it's excelling, And I think cinema will always be, good films will always have that market because they're a spectacle. And if they're made with that scale in mind, there's nothing like a big screen experience.
It's going to survive the mobile,
I feel
you
so,
think?
yes.
Okay. So coming back
I mean, in India, I mean, survival is also about quality, and quality is an issue because of whether it's the fact that we don't pay our writers enough, or there just aren't enough writers that are great and that have seen everything, that know and have that sense of structure, that when they present that script to you, you know that about 10 minds have worked on it and it's just going to be flawless. You just have to do your bit. And a successful Indian actor has to be part scriptwriter. He has to sit there and then say, oh, there's a problem on page 3, and meet and sort it, and you know, you're Amir Khan, and then you sort it beautifully. But maybe you're not a great script sorter like me, at which point you struggle.
Yeah.